What would I do if I did not have all these beautiful people to share my love and talk with them about the imagination unleashed, the creativity explored in all the many different mediums that are now with us today? To be a nerd at a comic convention now is to be accepted, rejoiced, and celebrated. There is no hatred allowed in our world of the imagination. We are the strong-minded and the accepting of all races, all thoughts, all beliefs. Everything is because it is all possible in the mind of creation, and to live in a world that accepts pure creativity is truly the only way to live.
Thank you, my Collider family. You guys are all awesome.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of The Meaning of Podcast. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we talk about your favorite directors and the deeper meaning within their films. And this one's going to be a very different episode, guys. Unfortunately, as most of you guys know, the passing of Jon Schnepp was very quick, was something that was unexpected, was something that impacted everyone. People that know him, people that don't know him, people who would just enjoy his personality and hear his opinions on movies. And obviously, as you guys know, Jon Schnepp is from Collider, and RB3 is much more connected than I am, but there's a connection between Collider and Schmoes, which we were a part of for a very long time. So we're going to keep the tone as light as we can. We're not going to be all dreary and stuff, but at the same time, we do want to pay tribute because we feel like it's very important to pay tribute to someone so impactful and so big in his reach. So that's what we're going to talk about on this episode, guys. I don't know if you have any words.
No, I mean it was Sutton, and honestly, like, we were probably considering doing an episode on Schnepp, even if he would not have passed away.
Absolutely,
like, we were, I think that was something that we would have had done in the future. And he has so much going on. He was so impactful, not just in the internet community. I think just on a personal level, with at least me, and I know probably for you too, we're both big fans of Collider Movie Talk and AMC Movie Talk and Heroes and all those shows they do. And he just, to me, he was a big inspiration. I always admired that he was both a filmmaker and a critic, which is something that I kind of aspire to do as well as a career, and Schnepp was just big on that. So yeah,
absolutely, and we'll get more into that as well. I mean, I definitely want to clarify that we're gonna keep the same structure for our show, but at the same time, it's great because we are all fans. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't just like, I remember when Schnepp did this, 'cause to be honest, I can't. Like, I wasn't personally close to Schnepp. I didn't really talk to him that much. So from my perspective, it's going to be very much more from a fan perspective, which is what you guys are too, I'm assuming. So it's just going to be a great opportunity for us to just fanboy out on someone that was so impactful. And I'm assuming you talked to Schnepp quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I met him a couple of times at some of those. I always found it commendable that every time I was like at a con or something like that, just with like WonderCon or LA Comic Con, he would, like, whenever they did the meet and greets, he would always make it out to talk to me, which is weird because it's Jon Schnepp. You know what I mean? He's just, like, he directed so many great films and all that stuff that I'm big fans of, and obviously watched them pretty much almost daily. But he was just so cool and always made an opportunity and made it a point to talk to everybody and be cool. So
yeah, and we're going to talk about your Comic-Con adventures too. RB3's fresh out of Comic-Con.
Oh yeah, fresh out of Comic-Con.
But before we do, guys, we're going to read your comments from last week's episode, which did considerably better than our other episodes, which was on Quentin Tarantino. That's probably why it did better.
Tarantino.
We got more comments than usual. Hey. Last time I'm like, we got 4 comments.
Hey, this one we got to get them out. And listen, I was at the Rotten Tomatoes panel at Comic-Con.
Oh, that's right.
They have this fresh or rotten flag here. I will be using this today. If your opinion, the whole panel was your opinion sucks, right? Okay, yeah. So if you're, this is not like a paid promotion or anything too. I just had this in my backpack,
and you just think it's cool.
Yeah, I was like, all right, let's have some fun with this. So if I agree with your comment or not, boom, fresh, boom, rotten.
That's a lot of pressure, guys. It's a lots of pressure. Starting things out is Mr. Ryan Nielsen that says, "Hey fellas, as a fellow film major and As a fellow film major and maker and huge Tarantino fan, gotta ask, I feel like Tarantino is a filmmaker that gets a person curious on film even more interested. I feel like it's a bridge to other stylistic filmmakers. Has your regard from Tarantino changed over the years, less or more?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, for me, yeah, definitely watching Tarantino movies is something that got me way more into questioning into both his filmography and just looking at stuff that was similar, right? Like where he took influence from, where his styles come from. And they look at his influences from French cinema with like Jean-Luc Godard and the non-linear storytelling. But you also look at his American influences like Martin Scorsese and all this stuff. And his contemporaries as well, Paul Thomas Anderson. I think Tarantino is a good way to bridge to bridge that gap into opening up new audiences to seeing new stuff. So
absolutely, yeah, and we talked about it on the episode how much his movies changed throughout the years. His first film is definitely not like his last film that we recently saw. There's similarities, obviously, because it's Tarantino, but at the same time, you could see how he's evolving as a filmmaker through the 90s and then through current times.
And he grows. I mean, he's probably one of the only filmmakers that probably is almost considerably getting better and better per movie. And even if his later movies are not particularly up to your style or your flavoring, at least acknowledge that he is trying something different and doing something original.
Do you mean like on a story aspect or on a technical aspect?
It's from a technical aspect, right? Like if you look at his techniques as a director, he's always pushing boundaries. And, even though people didn't like Hateful Eight, there's something to be said about a director making a containment, Western, thriller, comedy, horror, like all these mixtures while still keeping it in-house, but still making it feel like a grandiose Western as well. So
absolutely, yeah. And it's I guess we can now say what would you say? Was that a rotten or?
I would say that comment is a fresh.
That's not fresh. That's not
fresh.
That is fresh. I'm sorry.
Fresh right here. The green is the rotten, red fresh. And who's the guy again?
Ryan Nielsen.
Ryan Nielsen, fresh. Your opinion is fresh.
Also, Ryan has a YouTube channel. I clicked on it, and sure enough, we found out he has a YouTube channel where he talks about movies. So if you want to check out Ryan Nielsen's YouTube channel, free press, bro. Free press. DB Cupanero says, the boys have video now. Yes. And then he has another comment. He says, forgive me, I exclusively listen to the SK shows on iTunes. We've had video, DB.
Hey, DB.
Where you been, bruh?
Hey,
we started out with video.
DB, you've been able to see my black ass sweat for
it's real today,
43
guys.
Episodes so far. But thank you, DB, for being an iTunes listener. For that, your opinion is fresh.
Okay.
Comment rotten.
Yeah, I was going to say that comment. You got to say that comment's rotten just for being behind, bro. You got to be up with it. You got to be up with the meaning of.
Thank you guys for watching our iTunes listeners. You guys are doing great for us, and we really appreciate that. iTunes listeners are probably more loyal. I'd almost say the YouTube audience.
Yeah, they're probably more positive, too, than other listeners. Because, YouTube is slightly rotten, would you say?
Yeah, right.
The YouTube comment section, normally.
YouTube comment section. You guys
speaking of that, Freeman Dubstep says, I just clicked on this video to unsub.
Freeman Dubstep, rotten. That's all we gotta say about that one.
Gunslinger 199 says, great conversation, guys. Pulp Fiction is definitely my favorite, and Jackie Brown I have only seen as a kid and didn't enjoy it as much. Check maybe you should rewatch it.
I think that's a fresh. This is a fresh rotten here. This is an in-betweener. I give it right down the middle.
Bassist 1996 says Inglourious Bastards might be my favorite Tarantino movie. What I find interesting is that Tarantino wanted Adam Sandler for The Bear Jew, but he couldn't do it because he was doing Funny People. Though Eli Roth was pretty solid, I will always wonder what Adam Sandler would be like in Eli Roth's role.
Interesting.
There's a thinker. What do you think, RB3?
I enjoy Inglourious Bastards as well. Adam Sandler in that part would have been fascinating. And,
it would have taken you out of the movie when you first see him, right?
Yeah.
But because I feel like Mike Myers is in the movie, but he's so like covered in makeup, and which is kind of what he does. I don't know.
Hey, look, Tarantino is the king of reviving careers. The king of reviving careers. I think it would have been amazing to see Adam Sandler in that part. That being said, Eli Roth is also kind of perfectly cast in that too, with that cold, calculated silence that he has in that. So. Yeah, I'd say that's a That's a fresh.
That's a fresh comment.
That's a fresh
and
comment.
that is our last comment. So it's good that it's fresh. But before we get into Schnepp, we want to get into RB3's Comic-Con adventures, because unfortunately I wasn't able to go, but RB3 was able to go. And did RB3 live it up, guys? We'll find out now. Ooh. How was Comic-Con, man?
Comic-Con was cool, man. It was cool. This is the first Comic-Con I went to without a badge, so I literally didn't have a badge. But I was able to get into the Hall H panels because I was with schmoes and stuff like that. Beyond that, I didn't really walk the floor. It was the first Comic-Con I was, legally allowed to drink. So
you hanged out with the Wangers.
I hung out with the Wangers and got to had the opportunity to be a lot more involved in the partying scene of the Comic-Con experience,
which is something that I still I've never been a part of. In the sense, I'm talking about the whole, fully immersing yourself in the party scene is what I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
because I'll go to the parties, I just won't partake in the activities that you can do once you're 21.
You don't. You're straight edge.
Yeah,
man.
I really am. But that's great. So you got to fully experience the Wanger lifestyle.
Yeah,
would say.
Yeah. They got into some really cool venues. Really, it was only really like one day of partying, and then we had one day of trying to like bar crawl or whatever.
Sure.
After actually not bar crawl. There was probably the Thursday night was like the party night where you see videos of me on Twitter with me and Jay Washington like dancing it up. You know what I mean? That was Thursday night. Friday night we went to Ellis's comedy show.
Oh, that's right. How was that? I bet it was great. Right?
Yeah, it was amazing, man. We got to see John Roca do some stand up. He opened.
That sounds like
he opened.
An oxymoron. I can't picture it. It's so it's so difficult to comprehend.
Hey, I thought it was good. I thought it was really good.
No, I'm not. It's nothing against John. I just don't imagine that.
No, he was up there. He probably had. I don't know if I should be allowed to talk about. It's fucking comedy, whatever.
Yeah.
He had he had a great bit where he brought out a trash can because he thought he was going to throw up on stage. So, like, he said that off top and thought it was funny.
Yeah.
But then he talked to him afterwards and he said he was really that nervous that he thought he was going to throw up. So,
that's what comedy is. It's being 100% super transparent. And
right.
when you're that transparent, it's funny.
It's funny. It's funny.
And that's the Robin Williams effect.
Yeah, he had a good one. Jay Washington also performed. Our buddy Iffy.
I love Iffy.
Yeah, man, he had a terrific set. He's probably one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And Ellis killed it, of course, and Daniel Radford and Joseph Scrimshaw, Joe Starr, a lot of people. It was mostly all Collider Schmoes fans in the audience too, and Screen Junkies fans as well. And they had a ball as well. So
that's great, man.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
yeah.
I remember when I think it was 2015 Comic-Con when I went up with Copster. That's right. And Ellis had a comedy show that Wednesday, so we all went as a group to see that comedy show as well. I think that was the last time, but either way, it's always fun because I've seen Ellis a few times and he's great. So every time I go, it's always
this was my first time seeing him.
No
live.
way!
Yeah, seeing him live.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Well, now you can. I mean, I don't know if you can
I
come
can
to
go
the comedy
into his
store.
comedy clubs.
Yeah,
now.
I was gonna say you can go to the comedy store now.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's gonna be a fat check because this was like a $20 entrance fee and then like some drinks.
Man, when you roll up with Ellis, ain't no fat check there, bro.
Nah. But it's funny. This is my first time.
Ellis got the hookups.
Yeah, he hooked us up. He definitely hooked us up, and that is my first time realizing that you actually have to a 2-drink minimum at a comedy club. I know this is not news for most people. This is news for me. All right, newly 21-year-old. So it was tough. But yeah, that was Friday. And then Saturday there was that big the wake that we had in remembrance of Schnepp that evening. So those were the big.
Yeah, but overall it was a pretty solid Comic-Con.
It was good. Yeah, I got to see the Hall H panels for Sony, Universal, Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers had probably the coolest panels because I don't know if you've ever been to Hall H for Warner Brothers, but they like open up like
that's
the
right
on
they
the
do.
side.
I've never been, but I've seen videos of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was fun, but it was also weird when they had the Fantastic Beast panel or all the Warner Brothers panel. They made everybody wear like these wristbands that like lit up. So whenever somebody like waved around from Harry Potter, it was just like light up and shit.
I heard Johnny Depp came out.
Did
he come out to Cheers though? I don't know.
He came out and he came out with Cheers, but I swear the room just died. It died. And I don't know if it was less to do with the controversy. It was much more to do with just the fact of just his monologue being so sleep. I don't know. I never fully watched Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I kind of fell asleep in that movie. I don't know where Johnny Depp shows up. Is this character really?
He's not in that movie.
Is he? Is he
no,
not?
He's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like not at all, or is he just for one scene? Or
no, he's just not. I don't think he's in that movie.
Then what the fuck is he doing on stage?
Because he's playing friggin' Grindelwald.
Yeah, but like I don't know. He did this whole thing like
he's in the next movie.
He's I guess the movie's named after him. He does this whole thing. Man, and I'm here to conquer the world. It
sounds like Ultron.
It was 3 minutes of just this dude like sleepingly like monologuing. I don't know, it put me to sleep. People loved it. It was cool though. It was cool. And then it got awkward when Amber Heard came out, like for Aquaman.
Oh, yeah.
Immediately
that
after.
is really awkward.
Yeah, same room, same studio.
Dang.
I don't know why.
Come on,
that was a good
man.
idea.
I am not a Johnny Depp fan, to be honest, but whatever. Anyways, let's move on to our main conversation, which is all about Jon Schnepp. Yeah, I mean, obviously it happened over Comic-Con, which is something that's insane. I mean, the coincidence that event would go on the same time that someone who's so influential within the comic world and within the con world would experience an unexpected passing during that time is very difficult for a lot of people. And it's crazy how many people it really affected, because if you go on Twitter and on Instagram, so many different people would give him shout outs. Like even Henry Cavill gave him a shout out.
Henry Cavill, Superman crazy. Himself, Mike Coulter, Luke Cage.
That's right. That one really hit me too. That one hit me hard, man, because the idea of, and I'm going to say it, the idea of someone having plans to do stuff and not being able to accomplish those plans, to me is like, that's the true tragedy of a quick passing like that. It's just so tragic, and it really, hurts your soul. It hurt me really bad, and it hurt my entire family because we were just fans of Schnepp, like we talked about beforehand. Speaking of that, I want to talk about, before anything else, a segment that we've kind of been doing called My First Time, or The First Time. What is your first encounter? That doesn't have to be a movie he did, but just even his personality, or whether it be online or whether it be in a cinema. What was your first encounter with the Jon Schnepp persona?
Well, I mean, I remember being a fan of AMC Movie Talk way, way, way back in the day, like way back when it was just John Campea and Amy Rose and Dennis Hand. I remember the first day Schnepp came in. I literally remember that day because they were looking for somebody because they just announced Guardians of the Galaxy. And then they were like, oh, I guess like he knew about Guardians of the Galaxy, so he came in and talked. But he was just this wild dude with like this big hair. And I was like, dang, this dude's funny, man. And then from that point on, he just became more and more of a regular personality. So that was my first encounter with him, was back in the AMC Movie Talk days. And then, of course, big fan of AMC Heroes. And you can even, it's so funny. I love when fans like go back and like watch old episodes and like screenshot like me at the top of the comments back when I was like 16, 17, like leaving comments when I was just, a fan or whatever.
Would you say mean comments?
No, I was pretty positive for most of the time. Yeah, most of the time I was pretty positive. And of course, this stuff moved over to Collider, and then Collider grew into its own, own thing, and then comic book shopping also became another thing that I really enjoyed. Like sure. I watched every episode of that mug.
Me too.
Yeah. So I don't know. He was a great personality. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely it's the same with me. It was AMC Movie Talk. I was a massive fan of that, and I would watch that like every day. And I do remember when he first came in, because you're right, it was about the Guardians of the Galaxy thing.
Yeah.
And my first reaction was, I love seeing people like Schnepp, people who, and I know this is a word always thrown around, but this is what I thought during the time, so I have to be honest, I was like, you could see 2 minutes of Schnepp and he's a real nerd. Yeah. Like not just like a nerd who's like,
faking it,
swagged out, but I'm talking about nerd.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like that's one of my favorite things when I check out other YouTube channels, is when I see a dude and I'm like, yeah, I can tell that, or a girl too. I can see like, yeah, I can tell this shit's real. Right, like when you go home, you still get into this shit. Right. And that, to me, especially during that AMC Movie Talk time, was when it was dying out, when real nerds were dying out, and it was just getting replaced with, like, super cool, swagged out people. Yeah. And then I started to lose interest in those channels. But for me, when I first saw Schnepp, it was that kind of I can relate thing, because I'm a nerd. Like every time when people talk about high school now, it's like being a nerd is cool, but back when I was in high school, it wasn't that cool, man.
Right.
Like I was that kind of nerd, the nerd that would just not be cool at all, because I was so into the most random stuff, like comic books and anime. That's not a cool thing to do, to be a part of.
Right.
And I saw Schnepp as that connection, and obviously as time went by, and I was following him throughout Collider, even throughout his show with I forget the channel, but the Sweaties show that he was gonna do with. Remember that?
Was that Film HQ or something like that?
Yeah, it wasn't Film HQ. It was like another brand back when they were doing like the after shows and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I remember that, and I remember they announced he wanted to do a superhero show. I remember all the other shows that got pitched, and we saw a few episodes of, and didn't see the rest of the episodes.
Right. I was the AMC Rewind. You remember
Rewind,
that one?
and then there was the superhero pitch one. I forget what it was.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Where they're like at like in a courtroom or something, like a setting like that.
I remember that debate. It was like the debates, right?
Yeah,
AMC debates or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And then I also remember when they had who was that? The Collider Nightmares, of course, right? Like he was probably the biggest champion of that too. And of course that show isn't around anymore. But
and obviously Heroes too was something that I catered towards, because I really did enjoy the conversations. And I know a lot of people would be like, oh, it's the same hero talk, but for me it was the personalities that made it different, and it was Schnepp hosting the show that made it so unique. Because as Schnepp in movie talk, he always gives great opinions, but Schnepp hosting is like, the show is like a character within itself. You're almost like expecting craziness, wackiness, different things, different takes, rants. Like it's much more of a you don't know what to expect kind of show. And I enjoyed it.
I have to personally thank Schnepp for just the amount of comic books he like introduced to me during that time. Just when I was watching Heroes, man, like everything that I know now about comic books mainly comes from that show. Particularly, he introduced me to my favorite comic book series, Invincible. And I remember that was one of the first recommendations they had on that show. I was like, well, what kind of thing is this? And I had it on Comixology or whatever, and just like read through, and it's one of my favorites now. And same thing with a lot of other artwork and artists. I remember he was one of the first people to acknowledge the whole thing with Bill Finger being one of the Batman creators.
Oh yes. My God, that was like a huge thing that went down.
Yeah. And I remember he was the first. I don't know if that was the first time I had ever heard of that, was through him. And then I remember like the whole documentary coming out and him like promoting that and watching that, and just opened me up to a whole larger knowledge of comic books and sweatiness that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Absolutely. And I feel like most of people out there watching or listening have also felt that same way when it comes to his personality in AMC Movie Talk and Collider. It's one of those things that's Schnepp to you, and that's even when Henry Cavill said on his Instagram. I just thought that was very funny how he knew Schnepp from Collider, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. People actually watch the show, and they follow up with internet personalities and internet movie reviews and movie talk and schmoes related stuff, like whether those types of channels actually get people in the industry interested, like a Henry Cavill or like directors and stuff like that.
Right.
I think that's a great thing too. But what's even funnier is I'm remembering back in the AMC Movie Talk days, I can't lie, every time he was introduced by Chris Lee Kennedy, I think her name is Chris Lee.
Yeah, Chris Lee Kennedy.
It was the director of Superman Lives. What happened? And she would like always overdo that. And after watching the show so much, you were just like, I gotta see this damn movie. I don't know if you felt the same way.
I was like, I just has to.
She always says it, so I'm like, I might as well see it.
And they used to play like the trailer like all the time, like when it was coming out. I was like, all right, this is hype. And before we move on, I was gonna say for Heroes, I also got to commend Schnepp for being one of the only movie pundits who was like actively working to put more women of color on his panel.
Oh, that's
too,
great.
Right? You know what I mean? Like Markia is on his panel.
That's
I think
right.
he's had Danny on the show too, I believe in the past, if I'm not mistaken. And he's had some people, and he's been very good at keeping it diverse. And then even having celebrities like Abby Shankar with that infamous episode of Heroes.
That's right. Yeah. Were you there when he was with Schmoes?
I was there.
And he wanted to. Christian was like, I gotta ask him about that episode.
Yeah. I totally remember that, and I remember.
But the fact that I'm sorry to interrupt. But the fact that the way he got him in was like they just literally met and talked. And was like, hey man, come on the show. And he's like, sure. That to me is like I thought because when you first see someone like him beat on the show, you would assume like, oh, they're probably friends that go way back. No, they were just like talked and were like, be on my show.
Right.
And I was like, that's crazy. That's really crazy.
Right. And I just all like I don't know. I feel like he's always been good at promoting different voices.
Sure.
And I think that's essential when we're talking about this industry and stuff like that. I think he had a wide range of panelists and people, and kind of put a lot more people on, and Coy and all those other people too. So.
Yeah, and obviously Amy too. I think
Darling,
Amy's great too. And you're right. The fact that because he's the host of the show, it's his show. The fact that he would go out of his way to find different people, to me, that's so appealing because you get the same people over and over again, and it's great. But sometimes you do want to see different takes and different opinions, and people like Mara Burnett, Amy is great too. The new people he was having on, like the girl from Scotland, the Scottish girl was great. I think she's great. Right. I mean, this is my first time talking about that, but to me, I was like, oh, this girl's great. You're right, Markia, like all these types of personalities are just a joy to see on Heroes, and you have a different type of conversation. So a lot of credit to him to really incorporate that, to be a part of the show.
Yeah, he was always good at listening to people too. So
that's true.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, man. But his movies.
His movie. So tell me when you first saw this movie. Was it during the AMC Movie Talk days?
Yeah,
was it later on?
I remember as soon as it came on sale, because I can contribute to the Kickstarter because it was a big Kickstarter.
That's
then.
right. Yeah.
And I remember the Kickstarter just kept going and going and going. I'm like, damn, this shit got to be like the hottest shit like out. And then I remember they're like, oh man, they just like booked the interview with like Tim Burton, like or with the guy John Peters at the very last second. And I remember John Peters because I had literally just watched the Kevin Smith comedy special where Kevin Smith was talking about this dude John Peters. I was like, all right, like if this is gonna be in the movie, like I'm buying this shit immediately. So I pre-ordered it. It arrived to my doorstep, and I popped it in immediately, man. Like. And I've always loved it, man. I've never not enjoyed watching this.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Smith said over at Comic-Con, it's one of the best documentaries he's ever seen. Yeah. These are the kind of documentaries. I mean, I love documentaries, but these are the kind of documentaries that are made for me, literally made for me. Because I love documentaries about movies. I love documentaries about movies that were almost made but never got made.
Right.
And I love superhero movies, all three of them combined, and it's a fantastic movie.
And I love Nicolas Cage. Yeah, I love Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage, man.
The fact that he booked half these interviews, like Kevin Smith, Tim Burton, like John Peters.
John Peters is huge.
Yeah, because that guy lives in like the hidden like fucking forest. You know what I mean?
I think the greatest thing to come out of this documentary, and this is my opinion, is the whole giant spider thing. Yeah. The fact that he's like, bro, I gotta have that giant spider. And eventually, obviously, the movie didn't get created. And then Wild Wild West comes out. Right. And he's like, put a giant spider in that damn movie. And sure enough, there's a giant spider.
There's a giant fucking spider.
In Wild Wild West, which to me, because I grew up on Wild Wild West too. I don't know if you did, but Wild Wild West was the shit when I was a kid.
Right.
That movie was dope. I was like, Will Smith and this crazy steampunk cowboy movie. Hell yeah. And then there was I think it was Burger King who did promotion for it, where you can get the sunglasses and the toys. Salma Hayek was in the movie. Like, that movie was hype for me. Right. So I just think it's hysterical how there's a connection to that.
Yeah. And oh man, all the stories you just see in this thing. I like all the creation of like the different costumes that Nick Cage had in this thing.
Yes.
The ones that like glow and all, like how he got that footage is just amazing to me.
The looks for Brainiac.
Right. All the drawings and art and inspiration. And that also put me on to understanding more of how the art of movies is kind of conceptualized and understood too. And now there's a big wave of YouTubers making these kind of documentaries of like the movies that were never made. I know there's this whole channel called Cut Short that does like a lot of superhero movies that does all superhero movies that were never made light of day. But I remember that channel popping up after this documentary coming out. So
sure.
I don't know if there's an influence there, but of course there's always been movies about movies that were never made. But this one, and this one in particular, this came out, what was it, like 2014, 2013, something like that. This came around the same time that Jodorowsky's Dune came out, which is another documentary about about movies never made. great.
That's probably one of the most famous ones.
Yeah. And I love that. I love both of those movies because they're so different, but they're also approaching the same thing of an artist just trying to get their vision out and just not being able to do it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I recently, these past few weeks, I've been documentary binging for some reason. I don't know why. I just been in the mood for documentaries. And then on like my fourth or fifth documentary, it hit me because obviously I'm an aspiring filmmaker as well. Not as much as Ep43, but I'm also, and I kept thinking to myself, man, documentaries are kind of hard to make.
Yeah.
In fact, they're really hard to make.
It's nuts, man.
It's so hard to make a documentary.
Yeah.
Make it appealing. Make it something that you want to listen to. Something that you want to see 2 hours of. Because to be honest, if there's like a 15-minute documentary, I'm like, this shit is lit.
Yeah.
But if it's like 2 hours, I'm like, they better be good.
Right.
Keeping people's attention for a documentary and having the footage available to keep people's attention is very difficult to do.
Right.
And so that's massive props to Schnepp as a director.
And this one never drug on, man. And never, I was always intrigued. I was always fascinated. It gave a lot of different perspectives to the situation. And I love the fact that it allowed, I love the whole sequence where he talks about the stuff like the giant spider and all that stuff, because it allowed the Kevin Smith side of the story to be told and also the John Peters side. It allowed, this documentary allowed the sides of the stories that we wouldn't have had understand. We see the Tim Burton side of it too, and we saw little animations that they incorporated into it as well. But the fact that this is a film that, a lot of times when you make these kind of documentaries, it could be biased towards one side, biased towards the other side. This movie gave a lot of perspective as to what would have been this movie, and kind of almost celebrates it and appreciates it in a way that, people who just hear about this whole concept of a Nick Cage Superman movie directed by Tim Burton, written by Kevin Smith, you hear that on paper and you're just like, what? Like, this is not.
That sounds insane.
Yeah. But this makes it like loving and affectionate, and definitely convinces me that I would have definitely seen this movie if it would have happened.
I think everyone would have seen this movie.
Yeah.
It just sounds so crazy. You have to see this movie. Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a very impactful movie and something that you just had to see if you were ever a fan of AMC or Collider or anything that Schnepp has ever been a part of. It's something that you always, it's perfect. It's perfect for movie fans. It's perfect for comic book movie fans. It's perfect for the audience that they were a part of, that Movie Talk was a part of and still a part of, very much so. Nice. So yeah, absolutely. Credit to Schnepp. And something else I wanted to say, especially when it comes to this movie, because I feel like this is the biggest movie it ever did, is the fact that every time on Movie Talk, when Mark or whoever was hosting would give him the option to say, Schnepp, as a director, how do you feel about this? Whether it be something in the script, whether it be a casting news. And I always found it refreshing knowing that Schnepp wasn't just a commentator, wasn't just a personality, wasn't just a critic. He was an actual artist, someone who partook in making movies, who partook in creating content and creating actual things that can be seen on film and can be seen in a theater. Like that to me, or on a TV screen. That to me always made it so appealing and so much more interesting to hear it from a director's perspective. Not just, credit to all the other personalities, but not just them, but as someone who's actually a physical director who would take stuff and make stuff is so much more interesting to me. Right.
And he was always very understanding and very kind of, the artistic process and added a lot of perspective to things. I remember, he added a lot of value to conversations when they would talk about like visual effects and stuff too, because I remember a lot of times they would have that debate of whether or not you can nominate visual effects, performing actors.
That's right. He was big on that debate.
Yeah, and he was big on the side, of the visual effects artists, which, is easy for a lot of personalities because they are talent, because they are, in front of the camera, they're going to say, nominate actors. But for him, his perspective was always like, no, there's people behind the crew, people behind the camera who add a lot to it. It's not just pressing one button.
And it's an opinion that I share with him. That's absolutely the case, for sure. And it's something that it's very distinctive to have those two perspectives, because I feel like when I say Josh Brolin was Thanos, he 100% was Thanos. I can't argue that. I can't say Josh Brolin voiced Thanos or Josh Brolin was the inspiration for Thanos as far as like a facial structure or something. But he wasn't. He was Thanos, 100%. He has that role. However, I do what he said as far as like the actual physical animation and taking little things and shaping them is an artistic thing to do as far as the visual effects people.
Right.
So it's both. It's actors and visual effects people who should take credit for that.
Right. And I'm glad he always put out the attention that to shed light on that. And I always remember he was big on watching a lot of indie movies too, and promoting a lot of independent filmmakers.
So true. Yeah.
And that was always because I remember they also had that show with AMC. They had AMC Rewind, but they also had AMC Indie. Yeah.
And I watched it like a lot.
right. He used to be on there.
Yeah.
And he was on there because he always had a wealth of knowledge and kept up to date with young talent.
And that's so refreshing when you hear a movie talk discussion and you can have someone who can have different opinions, especially someone who is waving the superhero movie flag like Schnepp, because it's always indies versus superhero movies. Which one? And Schnepp, like me, is both. Why not both? Like he's very much one of those people who can rant and discuss Avengers for hours and do the same for like a very small indie movie. And as someone who, me personally, I mean, I did freaking indies for Schmoes for a little bit, a short-lived amount of time, but as someone who takes pride in enjoying indie films and promoting indie films on my platform, which is tiny or non-existent, is so refreshing to hear that on someone who has a much bigger platform like Schnepp. That to me was so important and something that I would have conversations with Alicia about. And when back in the old school Schmoes days, when Alicia was around, like we would always talk about that stuff, and that's very great. It's very like I said before, refreshing to that you can have someone who's the biggest superhero movie fan and he's the biggest indie movie fan. That's great. And from besides just from his taste in indies and all these movies, I mean, he was big on animation too. That's where he had a lot of his background. That's right. That's almost like a huge part of his background.
Right.
The biggest part of his background.
Biggest part of his background. That's where he's known as for directing throughout most of his career. I know he directed some episodes of the Venture Brothers.
That's right. He did a lot of the Venture Brothers.
Yeah, I remember watching that show on Adult Swim as a kid. Very funny stuff, man. Hilarious stuff. I think put a lot of things that we see in animation, like Archer and a lot of those kind of shows came from the Venture Brothers and all that kind of stuff. And then of course Metalocalypse is what he's probably most known for.
Absolutely. And people love that. Yeah. And like it's crazy. I've talked to random people who don't watch anything to do with Collider or anything internet-y, and they love that show. They've openly admitted that they love that show. Especially, it's so funny because when you work in the industry, you realize how many metalheads are in the industry.
Right.
Am I right or am I right?
Oh no, you're totally right. You're totally right.
Like everyone you talk to who's like a gaffer or a lighting guy or like a producer, like they're all metalheads.
Yeah.
And very quickly, I'm like, all right, I'm definitely not. I'm in the hip hop train.
hip hop.
But quickly you learn about that. And I've been talking to random people who've been on shoots with me, loved Metalocalypse when I would mention it.
Yeah, no, and I did watch a lot of episodes of it before this, and man, that show is hilarious. I can see why everybody loves it, because what it is, it's about this metal group called Def Lord, who's like this extreme metal band, but it's always like they're put in like funny situations. Like so, like the pilot is them like rocking out super heavy, but then they have like a coffee sponsorship. So then like they're like, can Def Loc really, or have they sold out, or promoting coffee? And it's like, we're gonna make coffee as metal as possible. And then like they drop out of like the middle of the sky on top of this like gigantic box and like misses the target, and then like ends up like landing on the top of a bunch of fans, and like fans have to literally sign waivers. It's just funny. It's funny satire. It's amazing satire of the metal scene and of the personalities of rock stars and all that stuff. While also being a commentary on fans' reactions and how people react to all this stuff. So,
and it's also one of those things, because I've seen a little bit of it. It's also like what is metal, like yo, that's so metal, like that, like it, like you said, like the fan reactions to stuff and what they consider to be cool or edgy or different or metal is what people say about certain things, and the not just the music but the vibe, the personality, the stuff that they would talk about is all within that metalhead world, which Schnepp knew a lot about because he was,
and you even see him. Not metal related, but I just love the fact that when you watch Ferris Bueller and you see him in like the little background.
Isn't that hysterical?
Yeah.
That picture is so funny because they showed it on Movie Talk and I was like, that's hysterical.
He's just rocking out. He's just rocking out back in the day. But yeah, no, he's a super metal guy, and that plays into the show. There's also another funny episode that I died over. I just laughed so hard. It's like the band. I think this is the second episode, third episode, something like that. But the band. The band is like recording this album, and then they've been like recording this album for over like a year and a half or something like that, and the label has dumped $500 million into it, and they're like the artists have recorded 16 different albums, and they all just keep getting deleted, and they're just like, we have to record an album underwater, and they like dive to like the submarine. I don't know, a lot of funny. There's a lot of funny stuff that's a commentary on. It's also funny how in that show they portray like the government agencies like behind the scenes being like really scared and really worried about this metal band, like, oh, we have to take out this operation. It's the counterculture, and it's that whole fear of the counterculture thing that a lot of government people, or a lot of more traditional conservative people, always have. So that show definitely highlighted a lot of funny fundamental themes and stuff like that. So
it's absolutely great, and it's something that actually inspired other content and other people who've done it, similar to that animation, specifically the animation, but also the tone of the animation is so, it takes from so many different things, but it also inspires other content that has been made. And speaking of that, something else he did that is also animation related is the Black Panther.
Black Panther, yes, he directed a few episodes of the Black Panther animated series that aired on BET back in the day. This is under the Marvel Knights label. I think he directed episodes 4, 5, and I think he co-directed 4 and then directed 5 and if I'm not mistaken 6 as well. But he had a lot of involvement in the show, and this is a show. I mean, this is something that I watched as a kid, and I have on DVD that I've always had on DVD. Just from the very beginning, my auntie gave this to me when I was little, and it's always held a close place. And I always wanted to get his autographs on both of these one of these days. I just was always forgot to bring in my backpack or whatever. But it's cool because you see Damien Hanju in this movie playing T'Challa, Alfre Woodard playing the parts too. Kerry Washington playing Shuri, right? Shuri. There we go. So much of an incredible cast in this. Jill Scott playing Storm. Storm appears in this show. It's only 6 episodes and they're only like 10 minutes apiece. So really can run through this whole thing about an hour. But it's amazing. It's dope.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you want to be into more comic book related stuff, it's a fun way to experience a comic book in a visual sort of way.
Yeah.
In an auditory sort of way.
Yeah,
you can listen to what is being seen.
It's definitely one of the most traditional in terms of it being a visual comic book. It feels very much like a comic book that you're watching as like a motion comic or something like that.
It is, and it's also something that I don't know which came first, but did you see the X-Men style animation one that came out? I think it's Astonishing X-Men or something.
I haven't seen that one.
It's very similar to this, and that's kind of what, me being a nerd, what I would watch, and I remember watching this one as well.
Right.
And I know a lot of people might be like turned off by that, but to me it was so appealing. The style of animation of being very much like a traditional comic book. I loved it. I thought it was great.
I know Watchmen was one of the first motion comics I ever watched. Going back to our Zack Snyder episode, I think Zack Snyder was also responsible for putting together the motion comic book on the Blu-ray for Watchmen, which I just honestly like really enjoy and really love too. yeah, this I actually ended up using this this a lot when I was trying to recap on a lot of Black Panther coverage that we were doing for when it came out. So I definitely, these 6 episodes gave me a lot of freshening up on the mythology of the Black Panther.
And it's one of those things too that I want to talk about on a grander scale when it comes to Schnepp as being a proponent of stuff like Black Panther and other comic books as well. He was actually creating comic books, and that is something that once again it's very difficult to do for anyone who doesn't know. So he was able to give a perspective on adaptations and give a perspective on comic book movies to screen, and also on a bigger scale, which is something that a lot of people have been dodging and avoiding, is the meaning of comic books when it comes to social issues and when it comes to grander scale political things and that's something that we talk about on this show that can affect culture and that can affect opinions and that can affect certain things, and that comes straight from comic books. And I always found it refreshing on Movie Talk when he would discuss certain topics and not be afraid to get political, as people love to say in the comment section. Not be afraid to talk about certain issues that he didn't feel were political, that he felt were just morally incorrect, morally corrupt, or something that can affect the movie industry that has a very uncorrect and uncoursed sort of vibe to it. And he was so unafraid to talk about those things, and I loved it. I don't know about you, but I loved it. I'm sure a lot of people didn't, but I loved it.
Yeah, and even going off more of the point of him talking to fans, I remember right after I guess he had broke the whole scoop of that Tom Holland was going to be in Venom. I distinctly remember like talking to him like that same day that he did it at a Schmodown recording, and then I was like, hey, I saw your Heroes thing, and I saw you made that announcement. He was like, yeah, man, fuck it, like everybody was. He was like, and this is when I knew this guy really cared about the fans. He was like, everybody was worried about Venom. Nobody knew if Venom was going to be good or not, and I just wanted to put that out there so the fans like could have some hope in it. You know what I mean? Like to him it didn't matter if I don't think it mattered to him as much if his connections were whatever or he I think he really genuinely cared that the fans cared about the comic book movies and enjoyed them the same way that he did. Because even when there was a lot of the movies that he didn't like Batman versus Superman, I remember he was very negative about.
That's right.
And some other movies he was, he kind of didn't enjoy as much.
The one that comes straight to my head is
Transformers.
No, is the the Transformers one's great. Yeah, the recent one, Ava DuVernay's film.
Oh, Wrinkle in Time.
Wrinkle in Time. Didn't he trash that?
Yeah, he tore that shit to shit. I remember we're literally like about to go live for the Ava DuVernay episode,
and we were doing a review of it.
And we were doing a review, and I was like, Ace, you have to read this, man. And I was like, amazing. I was like, yo. But all people, man, Schnepp was just passionate. He was passionate, and he very much understood the things that he was talking about.
I also remember back when it was, I forget if it was on Heroes or Movie Talk, when he was talking about Doctor Strange, dude, and the hype for Doctor Strange.
Right.
A lot of it came from Schnepp. It really is an interesting thing when you hear about certain opinions, right? Because when it comes to Schnepp's opinions on certain movies, it's a good way and a good indication of what to expect, I feel, because it's so different from everyone else's. So when Schnepp says, I hated a movie, get ready, I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to see what I feel, because it's a different opinion than the usual people on Movie Talk. Or when he says, I love this movie, go see it, you take it with a different grain of salt. You take it with a grain of salt that's very much like, oh, I kind of want to check this out now because Schnepp is recommending it to me.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever like made a bad recommendation, honestly. Like I remember when he would recommend all these indie movies and stuff like that, I always be into him. So yeah, man. Like
even recently, I think he was talking. I might be wrong, but it might have been Sorry to Bother You or another one recently where he was just raving about it. Or it might have been Hereditary, I forget. But we'd be remiss if we don't mention his comments on horror too. I mean, he was a big proponent of horror movies and bringing horror to where it is now, because I really do feel like horror 4 years ago just isn't what it is now. As far as like people, horror talk and horror discussions and horror podcasts and stuff that's related to that. And he was a huge, he got me into horror, to be completely honest. I'm not a big horror guy.
he was
But
big.
Schnepp was one of those people that got me into it. Like
Yeah.
straight up, it's real. Like he actually got me into it just hearing him discuss about it.
Yeah, he was big on the Ash versus Evil Dead Schmodown
That's
match
right,
because he just was so in love with the Evil Dead franchise, and I mean he's just a big fan of horror movies in general. I remember one day when he was a guest on the Schmoes No Show, and I think I have the behind the scenes video of when I interviewed him. He's wearing a Superia shirt, you know, the old like Italian movie, horror movie. And then I was like, yo, that's a great shirt, man. He was like, thanks. Yeah, I heard they just like released on Blu-ray, and we had like a whole conversation about it. But yeah, he was just so nice, and he definitely had the deep cut appreciations for horror, and even deeper than most people, I think, because he also had a good appreciation for B movies and for things that are cult classics.
Yeah.
And you know, when we talk about Tarantino, one of the things that distinguish him as a filmmaker is his influence from cult movies that we talked about last week. And this week, you know, when we're talking about Schnepp, you can see a lot of those influences in his art, in his animation, in his documentary. And he transcends a lot of those ideas throughout all of his work, and even his talk as a pundit as well. So
yeah, something that I'm reminded of too, by the way, with what you were saying. He's always, I love the way he described certain movies that were good. He was always a big proponent of like why a horror movie is good can just be because it's a bloody, crazy, twisted ride that you're gonna love. Like that's always how he described certain things. Was always like, oh, if you're a big fan of disgusting, over the top blood shit, you're gonna love this. Check it out. And I was like, that's such an honest review that I want to check it out now that I know what I'm expecting. Whereas other people who recommend horror usually talk about like, this movie discusses the social issues, or this movie has, you know, a big underlying theme of what it means to be a part of this. But Schnepp was just like, yo, it's crazy, it's bloody, it's twisted, it's effed up, it's in your face, go see it. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go see it now. And I always found that so refreshing, once again, to use that word, how he described horror movies as something that is like, oh no, you have to be a certain kind of messed up to enjoy this. Right. But I still recommend it because you're gonna find the same joy that I find in it. And he would usually be right when it comes to movies that he would recommend that he would say are very, very messed up. And I love that. I absolutely feel like that's such a small thing, but it's something that is so huge when it comes to movie opinions. It's something that you can actually find joy in those things. Right. Which he did.
The fact that he like genuinely enjoyed the movies he talked about.
Yeah.
Genuinely enjoyed the comic books. Genuinely enjoyed the people and the fans and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
I think he was just overall just a brilliant individual. So.
Yeah, and obviously something else that he was huge a part of was cons, and he would travel the country and go to different cons and meet different people and promote his content and promote what he's made, but also, you know, be on the Comic-Con floor and you can just go up to him and have conversations. And as someone who's a part of the con world, who would not just go to San Diego Comic-Con, but other cons that I would go to, you know, back home in Phoenix, or other cons that I've been to around the country. It's a very, very, very specific type of fandom that do that. And he was able to meet the fans and be so nice to them and be so, you know, personable to all these fans that would go up to him, and whether it was a fan of his content or a fan of him on Movie Talk. It's so... That's rare for anyone who doesn't know, who doesn't go to cons, to meet people that you're interested in meeting at cons. Some famous people don't go out to these cons or don't do them or charge an enormous amount
William
to
Shatner,
meet him.
We're looking at you, buddy.
But there is specifically you. There is people that don't get a chance to meet him, but the fact that he actually goes out, you know, has to go on the flight, has to go on the trip. You know, that's an inconvenience for if you don't know, it really is. And the fact that he was able to do that and meet so many people and do it out of the kindness of his heart, you know, because a lot of it is like, oh, people doing it for the money. He's definitely one of the people who definitely didn't do it for the money. You can tell. It's a very transparent feel that you get from him. Right.
And that's why I think, you know, a lot of people, you know, we talked about Henry Cavill, Mike Coulter, even people like Justin Roiland, Edgar Wright, Aaron Paul. Yeah. All of these, you know, of course, Kevin Smith in the documentary too. All these people really came out and rallied for Schnepp because because of how great of a dude he is, when you actually meet him, you actually talk to him, and you actually see and follow his work too. It's just amazing that he left such a legacy behind. Even with the fans, you look at the picture that Holly took, or that was taken at Comic-Con during the wake, and there's like a lobby of like 300, 400 people, like all just there just to celebrate Schnepp. Of course, and like you said, it was tragic losing him during Comic-Con, but it almost felt kind of right to a certain extent. And because you just know that's going to be the place that we're going to remember him, we're going to celebrate him, and the place that, and you know, frankly, you know, for a lot of us who were mourning and during that time, it was kind of good to be at Comic-Con because it was such a community of people who all knew Schnepp, because we could all talk about it. It was also time to celebrate him too, and a time to everybody to read and enjoy comics and be a part of this whole movie space thing too. So yeah, it's
such a difficult thing. I was talking about it with my mom recently. Just death itself is it's so real, and how it affects certain people who knew him, who didn't know him. Like I said before, I didn't really know him, but other people who did, that must be so devastating. I realize how I react to it, and I'm learning very quickly as I grow older how I react to tragedy, and when it comes to quick death or death unexpected. It's for me personally, I just realize how emotional I am. I'm such an emotional guy, and it's one of those things that I think that's okay, and I think it's different how you mourn certain people, and it's about legacy, true, but I also feel like it's very, 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 very important to realize what the tragedy of death and how he's leaving behind, you know, a partner for life, basically, with Holly.
Holly, yeah.
He's leaving behind a family that
you know, this Blu-ray has that amazing video of when Holly proposed to Schnepp at the screening at the Egyptian.
Completely forgot, but yeah, absolutely.
The whole thing is on there, yeah.
It's one of those things where it's quick. It's easy to say, oh yeah, R.I.P. You know, peace out, Schnepp. That's cool. But it's another thing to really put yourself in the shoes of friends and family members, people who know him. That must be heartbreaking, like to a different level. I can't imagine, because me not even knowing him, I got emotional. Right. So it's one of those things where it's important to remember, and it's important to support the people that he left behind, which is why I should have done it in the beginning of this episode, but I'm doing it now. I really, 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 really not just recommend, I would tell people to go to the GoFundMe page. Yes. Yes. And if you haven't already donated, or even if you did donate beforehand, donate now. And even if it's something small, even if it's $10, $5, $20, whatever it may be, it may seem insignificant to you, but it's a very, very, very significant amount. That's something that I had a conversation with my mom about too, is like the idea of a GoFundMe and the ability to donate, even if it's just a small amount to someone that impacted your life, even in the smallest amount would make a massive difference for them and for their family and for Holly and for everyone Schnepp left behind. And I feel like that's very important to say, because so many people forget and might just say, oh yeah, peace out, Schnepp, I'm gonna just go rewatch this movie you made. It's like, that's great, but you can also do something more.
You have to donate. Yeah, I made a donation earlier in the week, and I mean, it's a cold system that it has to be this way, that we have to gonna be paid up the ass to, you know, for some medical help.
Oh, but, yeah, I can go off on that.
But yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But yes, please donate to, you know, because, you know, you have to understand, you know, Holly was, you know, was with Schnepp through a lot of this journey, you know, before he was, you know, I believe with AMC, before he was doing Death of Super, you know, she was with him the entire time. So, and, you know, I mean, of course, I can only imagine how heartbroken she is. I've never even, like, really actually formally met her, I don't think. But, you know, she definitely is the person who is what Schnepp lives through today in that sense. So yes, please, you know, make sure you donate. The link's going to be in the description. It's going to be right at the top. So please go there and donate some funds to him. Yeah,
and something that I want to close out with is saying how much it's so hard sometimes to lose. This is a small thing, but I feel like it's something that all of us can relate to, anyone who's listening or watching. that we're missing out on Schnepp's opinion on certain things, and I feel like that's so heartbreaking. We will never hear Schnepp's opinion on the Venom movie. Like, that's heartbreaking to me, man, because I really want to hear his thoughts or hear if what he said, did it come true? Was Tom Holland in it? Is he going to be I told you so? Is he going to be like, oops, didn't happen? Right. Like, that to me is so cool, and I feel bad he's not going to be able to tell us about his opinion on certain things that I feel would be so dope to hear about, for lack of a better word. It would be so cool to hear Schnepp's thoughts and Schnepp's reviews on certain things. Avengers 4, like all these cool things that are coming out. I to be honest, I was very emotional just thinking about that, because to me, I was like, man, he's never going to be able to see these stuff that you know, and we're never going to be able to champion so hard and to talk about this stuff, or even if it's something that reminds you of Schnepp. If I watch a movie and I'm like, man, Schnepp would really dig this shit, like he would love this, whether it be a horror movie or a superhero movie, like just thinking that thought to me is so heartbreaking, and it's something that I feel like at the same time it's something that you can cling to and say, man, I can remember Schnepp through opinions and stuff. I can remember Schnepp through a movie that comes out that reminds me of him. Like, that's so cool. And I feel like that's something that, you know, I definitely want to end on. And also say, you know, continue to support friends of Schnepp. You know, I don't know what's going to happen to Heroes, to be honest, but, you know, if the Heroes continues, then support Heroes, support what's behind them, support people that Schnepp championed himself. Because I really do feel like Heroes specifically is something that Schnepp would, you know, put a stamp of approval on when it comes to the type of personalities that are on that show, and then when it comes to the type of stuff that they're putting out. I really do feel like it's important to not just follow, you know, his close family and friends, but the people that he championed and the people that he supported. I feel like that's the best way to support the legacy of Schnepp, is to support the people that he supported, whether it be Holly, whether it be friends of his on Heroes. Go out and follow them, you know, see what they're making, see their kind of content they're putting out, and as a stamp of approval that Schnepp would have. I think that's important, because when someone recommends people to me, I think that's the most powerful thing. If I say something, if you say, hey man, I'm telling you, this guy's dope, like go out, watch this, go out and support him or follow him or whatever it is, the small thing you can do, I take that with a huge thing. That's the biggest thing that comes out of Hollywood is recommendations, right? People get hired make a living off recommendations, because to me that's the most powerful influence you can have on someone. No, and Schnepp has had an incredible impact on recommending people, places, comic books, all of this stuff.
All that stuff. I you know, go out and search it out.
Big advocate for still buying physical comic books and stores and stuff like that too. So yeah, overall, man,
big advocate of supporting small movies. Big advocate of being civil, of not being you know, so passionate in an unnecessary way that you're being vile and you're being morally corrupt and you're being rude. Like he was a big proponent of that, of even fandom,
he
of toxic fandom,
right. He spoke up against like the racist, you know, comments and the sexism and all that stuff too, and I always appreciated him for that. So overall, man, we're gonna miss Jon Schnepp a lot. He's, like I said, big influence on how I feel personally, and for what I want to do as a filmmaker and as a maybe pundit, you know, sometime down the line, and you know, or just in general, just his presence, you know, being that nice of a guy, just always being so honest and nice and cool. So
he offered like such a different type of personality and comedy and opinions that came with him on a personality and on a movie talk scale, that I personally have found it inspirational and enjoyable and entertaining, and something that always, you know, I could cling to, and I can feel inspired by Schnepp, whatever content that I feel I'm in, you know, in the industry. Absolutely, man. Even as, like you said, even as like a pundit or a critic, like that's something that's so cool that he's able to do that and do it with such authority and with such passion and compassion and with such feeling that he can connect to so many different people, and so many people can relate to him. Because I really do feel like Schnepp has one of the most relatabilities out of anyone I've seen on YouTube, period. Like, he's so relatable, and you can feel that across the screen. And that's the last thing I want to say is, you know, go support, like I said before, the GoFundMe, like I said before, Holly and his friends and family, and whatever they're creating, have faith. Robert Meyer, Renee, Amy, Claire, whoever it may be, just go check them out. Let us know what is your favorite Schnepp memory, whether it be a movie talk related one, whether it be a Heroes related one. Let us know what is your favorite Schnepp moment. If it's in his documentary, if it's in his that's great. If it's in his animation, let us know a Metalocalypse or a Black Panther moment that you really cling to. And go support Schnepp in whatever he may need. And that, for us, will do the meaning of podcast. Once again, guys, leave us these comments. Let us know what you think. And like we said before, go support Schnepp and his family and his friends. And let us know what you think as far as what you will cling to in this time that we have to reflect and to mourn Schnepp. And to celebrate Schnepp's life and what he lived and what he represented.
Celebration, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, guys. I'm Ace.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out from the meaning of podcast. Peace out, guys.